The concept for EPARTRADE is basically, in my opinion, there's a big hole in the internet. So the internet started many years ago, but there's never been an online business community for racers on the World Wide Web. The need for EPARTRADE is actually quite obvious. Basically, people in the business of auto racing need a place online to hang out and to get their problems solved.
It's extremely simple for a buyer or for a supplier to interact on the platform. The first thing you need to do is sign in, which is free. And the second thing is, when you see a product that you're interested in, all you need to do is click on request more information. If it's a company, you click on request more information, and then from there, it is forwarded directly to the buyer or to the supplier.
You can go to EPARTRADE.com, you become part of a community of businesses in racing, and it makes sourcing products much easier than just on the internet or using Google.
At EPARTRADE, there is no e-commerce. It's literally a connection just like at a trade show. So now, any time of the year, a buyer could reach out to a supplier through an email.
More than that, it's a place to go just to keep current every day. So it's a good place to start your workday in your racing business or in your offices of your professional race team. And you know you're current when it comes to new technology, industry news, technical papers, technical videos, all of that and more. We're not looking for a million hits per day. All we want is people who are really the volume buyers of racing products in the racing industry to be part of the little world of EPARTRADE. We have racing businesses participating from around the world. So you get suppliers from around the world, you get buyers from around the world.
EPARTRADE really eliminates having to travel, closing down your shop. Now you have a place to showcase globally your racing product and technology.
Good morning. I am Francisque Savignan, the founder and CEO of EPARTRADE, the global online platform for the performance and racing industry. Welcome to Race Industry Now, the technical and business webinar series from EPARTRADE, presented to you by ARP. With me this morning is Judy King, the co-founder of EPARTRADE, as well as our wonderful host, Brad Gilly. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Good. I'm happy because I woke up in North Carolina today. So,
yeah, Judy is going to be there for a few weeks visiting people. Yeah. Before we start, Judy, do you want to make a little announcement?
Yeah, and it was very sad to watch that video just now that we played. Unfortunately, we lost John Kilroy this past weekend, and we worked with him for 25 years, and he was a PRI magazine editor for all that time. And then when Steve Lewis sold PRI to SEMA, he ran PRI for 4 years, and he was such a joy. We learned so much through him, Francis, from John and Steve Lewis, and he was thrilled to launch this platform with us for the industry. So it's a great loss, and
we haven't made an announcement yet because we wanted to give Jack Kilroy, who is John's son and a brilliant writer, the opportunity to write a tribute. And so we should be getting Jack's tribute today, and when we have it, we'll make a public and official announcement. But so we'll dedicate this special webinar to John, and he knew Motul very well. We traveled together to Le Mans, where Motul is very much implicated. So without saying more, Brad, we're going to take over. We're going to bring our panelists. And I think I'm getting a signal from Reed Keneski, our producer. So we should be getting Dave and Joey anytime soon. But Brad, this is going to be a good one for you, right? Brad, can you hear me? Oh.
It's going to be a great one for me. I had the opportunity to talk. Oh yeah, do you have me? Am I stuck?
We hear you.
Oh.
Yeah,
let me get a better connection, Francis, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, you hear me? Okay. Well, good. Well, I would say I'm excited about this because we get to talk about motorcycles and racing and oil, which is something that I know a lot of people always enjoy chatting about. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there, and there's a lot of information out there, and we're going to dissect it all here today.
Very good. And I think we got Joey as well and Dave. Excellent. Very good. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
So,
Good morning.
Brad Gilly, you are in charge and we'll let you take over.
All right, thank you very much, Francis. We appreciate that. Today's theme is discussions on lubricant technologies for power and motorcycle racing applications by Motul. And joining us is Dave Woolman, the Director of Center of Excellence, and Joey Cabrera, the Technical Director from Motul. And gentlemen, how are y'all doing today? It's great to see you again.
Oh, we're doing fine. Thank you.
Yes, great, thanks.
Oh, well, fantastic. Well, you know what? Let's get started, first of all, just with our topic today and what we're going to be talking about, because when it comes to oil and misconceptions and different things like that, a lot of people look at oil sometimes and say, hey, it's just fancy marketing. It's just fancy packaging. You know, I'm going to put some oil in, I'm going to change it, and I'm going to be okay. But that's really far from the truth, isn't it, guys?
Oh, for sure. For sure. You know, you have the marketing part of it that has to make this bottle look very nice, very good with a lot of information, but also what counts is what's inside the bottle. That's where we come in to talk about the technical product and break it down, because it's not all the same.
Yeah, it is not all the same. Now Motul is known for its 300V Motorsports line of oils. So let's talk about, you know, maybe the difference, because we're talking about racing applications, but I'm sure we're going to bleed into a lot of different things as we're talking here today, and not even just motorcycles and power sports. But let's talk about what the difference is between the automotive product compared to a power sports product.
Okay.
Yeah, in general, you know, you have automotive engines where, you know, they're water cooled. Typically, automotive engines can reach anywhere from, you know, 235 Fahrenheit during operations, which that gets plenty hot. But just think about a motorcycle. It could even get a lot more harder because you got a smaller displacement, right? You have an engine that is either older water cooled or I mean, not older water cooled, but liquid cooled or water cooled. So the engine oil that goes into a motorcycle has to be designed to be more robust. It actually takes care of a lot of more components, to where the engine oil in an automotive, it only takes care of the engine. But here, it's got to take care of more components like a wedge clutch, the gearbox, the engine internals, you know, camshafts, cam bearings, and so on. Anything on that, Dave?
You know, as Joey was saying, that with the automotive 300V, we're looking for the most friction reduction that we can get to translate to higher power, more performance. It needs to be balanced. But on a motorcycle, it was just explaining that on, let's say, the Asian motorcycles, we have an engine, we have a wet clutch, and we have a gearbox, all in the same sump. And in the automotive division, normal cars of manual transmission, you have an engine, one compartment, a dry clutch, which is single, it's empty, transmission, which if it's a manual gearbox, a 7590, let's say, and a differential. So we actually have 4 different compartments to get the car moving. Whereas in a motorcycle, you know, we have a chain drive, but it's all encompassed in one. And that's a primary difference between automotive and motorcycle by engineering or by reality, but chemistry wise, they're different in a whole other matter.
Yeah, if we could, let's do this. And you know, I want to throw this over to you. First of all, Dave, let's talk about the different types of synthetics, because again, we hear synthetic, we hear, you know, a lot of people refer to it as dyno oil, you know, oil that we get from the ground and all of that. But again, there's more than that.
Oh, yes.
If you would describe the different types of synthetics that are out there, it's not just one type of synthetic, there are different classes of it.
Okay, very good question. What we'll do is, how about we jump into a quick technical, let's say, explanation of the different types of base oils. And so you're right, you know, people look at it and they say, gee, base oil. Oh, sorry, we have an audience now. So there's 5 groups of oil. All right, everybody is, you know, like what? So there's 5 groups. Group 1 and 2 are mineral, dinosaur oil. But if you could picture this, besides group 1, group 2, We have group 3. And group 3 is shall we say in the US, the first type of a synthetic, but it's still made from dinosaur oil, all right? It's still created from a mineral base. What happens is it goes through another process that, shall we say, cleans it, gets rid of paraffins or paraffin wax. So, you know, candle wax comes from mineral-based products. So then that's group 3, which is the first type of synthetic. It's the least expensive. It's going through, shall we say, people would consider it not a true synthetic, blah, blah, blah. But it's an excellent product. And then there's a group 4. Everybody's heard of a group 4. They call it polyalpha olefin. Just picture that the same train that brought ship that brought group 1, group 2, group 3. Well, we still use dinosaur oil for group 4, which is a true synthetic, but it goes to another plant. And as it goes, it gets hydrocracked. And then we're talking about a process that's called polyalpha olefin as a result, which is a group 4. So all 4 of these groups come from mineral-based. They're different processes. Obviously, group 4 takes a lot more work, and it takes a lot more time, and it takes a lot more heat, and it takes a lot more pressure to create this product. But the last group is group 5. There's a group 5 is called an ester. So you'll probably see on many different bottles, we have an ester core. 7100, which is our street series, is an ester base. We choose to use an ester base group 5. Well, you can have some of these esters created from dinosaur oil, some portions of it, but there's really something like 10,000 different types of esters. In other words, your air conditioner in California, for instance, can only be serviced by an ester-based lubricant because of pressures, temperatures. If you go to an airport, there is no jet in the world that runs on anything but a group 5 ester. It's you're sucking in minus 36, you're blowing out 750 degrees. It's so much, shall we say, so much going on in that jet. Esters are the only thing that can play. So we use group 5 esters, and the 300V, we call it an ester core, but it's actually 4 different types of synthetics. So we have 4 different group 5s. And soon, you know, we also have some natural or organic group 5s that are, shall we say, sweeter than others. But these 5 groups of oil, the top of the line, the highest, let's say, level of performance is a group 5. And that's what an ester is. So when you see a bottle of, we're not the only factory that uses some esters, but when you see the label, maybe we'll discuss reading some labels, you find that you'll see that it'll say blah, 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 synthetic, and then ester. And that word ester isn't my sister. That's a group 5 type of product. And it's actually a reaction between fatty acids and alcohol. So not to get technical, but if you take an aloe vera plant, squish it, that goo inside is a fatty acid. In the 70s, late 80s, we actually had a coconut derivative in our 300V. It was a natural product from coconut derivatives. And then as time goes on and you get to like 12 million gallons of coconut oil, you have to start looking for other sources, because as we grow, technology changes. And that's why we're now up to an ester core, which has multiple synthetics. How'd that do?
It was good. So when it comes to, you know, and what we're talking about here, you know, we're talking about, you know, motorcycles and power sports right now. But again, you know, if you have a question, you can certainly type it into the chat and we'll answer that for you. But also differences between on-road and off-road racing, and really how specific we get. I do think there are a lot of people, and especially if if you get on forum threads and someone talks about oil, then all of a sudden things explode. And you know, there's hundreds of internet experts out there that might not quite be experts, but certainly want to share their own experiences as fact.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing, you know, the research and development that we have done have taken us to one step further to make a product that's very specific, application specific. You know, we have a 300V off-road, we have a 300V road, and for a reason why we have the off-road, for better clutch compatibility, better grip. But so we had to take it to that next stage. I've had that question asked many times, why two? I break it down to them, letting them know that in motocross, it's a lot different than just riding your motocross bike on a recreational. When you're in competition, you put a lot of stress on that clutch. So we designed a product that would give you the best grip, but no slippage whatsoever. So you can engage better because of the types of competition you're doing with that bike, motocross, supercross, arena cross. So I want to pass it over to Dave just so he can explain a little more detail why that was done that way, why we're so specific.
Yes. Hopefully during this podcast, we kind of explain why we are so detailed and we have so many different app specifics. People are like, oh, why can't we just use an oil and pour it in and life is good? But as Joey was just explaining, there are differences on application. So if you look, you know, we have a 300V, and this is the road race. I don't know if you could see it, but okay. So it has a picture of a road bike and it's, you know, let's say the viscosity of 1040. So unless you're riding at the Isle of Man, normally street bikes aren't airborne and like a motocross bike. So if we think about it, we can have road bikes, very high horsepower, a very high torque. You know, you get a Hayabusa, it goes 200 miles right off the showroom floor. These bikes are made completely different than a 40 or 30 or whatever horsepower small single cylinder dirt bike. But what's interesting is that we have, I guess you can see it, this has got 300V, but it's off-road with a picture of a motocross bike. So why did we make two different oils that would be closer to the same viscosity is that if you can picture you're riding your dirt bike and you take off on a triple, you know, flying way up in the air, you'll see pros that hit the brakes, to slow the rear wheel down, etc. But while you're riding, you know, you're in the air, and as you land, unless you're perfect, right, you either knock the wheel forward or you knock the wheel backwards, and then as you land, you accelerate to get, you know, power to the ground. Thing is that when you're airborne and you land, especially if you have a quad or you have, you know, an ATV that has two sticky rear tires, as soon as you break that clutch free by landing incorrectly, either not enough throttle or too much throttle, then you accelerate like hell. And if we don't increase, let's say, the grip, this is where it starts to chatter and tries to burn. So the friction modification on the road stuff is 18% greater than on the off-road stuff. So technically, the off-road formula will give us 18% better grip on in the formula because of the application or the style of riding. And it's so different that we made a different product. So we have a road and off-road, 18% better grip, and the other characteristics are very close.
Yeah, and that 18% better grip, it's a lot when you're on the track. You depend on that. So that's a level of performance that goes to the next stage. That's very important when it comes to that type of competition.
You know, as we talk about racing and we talk about oil too, you know, a lot of times people think, oh, well, if it's good for racing, then it must be better for what I'm riding on the street or better for what I'm doing here, or vice versa. People might say, hey, you know what, I've been using this forever and I'm going to go ahead and use it in my racing application, whatever it may be. What are some of the differences between racing applications in the Motul oil versus just consumer meant for on-road use?
Yeah, like I said, we talked to many customers. I had that question thrown at me yesterday by a consumer. You know, I'm confused. You have a racing product and then you have a 7100, 300V. What should I be using? The first thing what I tell them, what type of riding are you going to do? Or what do you do on the streets? No, this is a street bike that I just ride canyons periodically, never sees a track, but it is a performance bike. Okay, but that's it. I haven't done anything else to it. So that's where I push the 7100 because it's a little longer drain interval. The only way you can see a lot of the 300V's effect, I'm not saying you're not going to see them right away. It's in the track. It's when you put it to the nitty gritty. It's when we said, something hits the fan. I'm not going to mention that word, but you want to have insurance. You want to make sure that you have, that insurance when something does happen, a small pebble hitting the radiator, the fluid leaks out. You see that it's getting hot, your engine's saying, hey, stop, something's going on. We've had many testimonials when the 300V has done its job, where they take the engine apart and they go, whoa, you know what? I can put all the parts back together and we could go racing. I'll just put a new radiator and we're on our way. But that's the design. There's a big difference between a 7100, our 5100, and our 300V. I'll let Dave explain that more in little detail.
So, it's interesting. With the 300V, it's our top of the line high performance product. It's made to, shall we say, take the most amount of temperature, the most pressures, etc. And depending on the motorcycle itself, for instance, you have a Ducati and it's a sport model, right? This always is going to be run at a higher level of performance. I mean, bike guys, they go for it. But if we had to pick between a 300V and a 7100, it also depends on application. So if, for instance, you talk to somebody or you ask him his riding and he's like, no, I go to the track once in a while, I'm on the street, we go play, and I change it every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. I don't care about the cost, I want the best. So what happens in that case is that the 300V is the best. And what happens, let's say the application wise, in that situation, I would remain with the 300V because if you're looking for insurance besides performance, as Joey was mentioning, if a rock hits the radiator, thermostat sticks, hose comes off, you just had the bike service, somebody didn't tighten a clamp and the water hose pops off. I mean, stuff happens. The 300V, back in the day, we used to have some maximum heat temperature as an apparatus that will show when you lose the film. And we had it with 300V 1550, somewhere close to 365 degrees before we lost the film, or the rings would pass through the film and actually touch the cylinder. Shall we say, that's kind of that temperature which, you drop sleeves into a block at 350 degrees. So you can imagine that if you can get oil temperature that hot, the whole engine is 325 degrees. You got other problems than oil, but the oil is made to withstand that. The other thing is that if you're going to change it in 3,000 to 5,000 miles, that's what 300V is actually, that's its realm. 5,000 miles between oil changes is fine. But if you look at, we're factory approved by Aprilia. Well, these wonderful people, to bring the cost down of service per year, they get some brownie points from the government. They recommend 15,000 kilometers or 1 year. This is an Aprilia sport bike. It's monstrous. It's fantastic. No one is going to buy this bike and run 13,000 miles between oil changes. They say that, but it doesn't happen. So if you want to run 13,000 miles, you better use our 7100 engine oil because it is designed with more detergents, more anti-foam, more anti-corrosion, blah, 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 to meet daily heat cycling, hot, cold, choke, hot, cold, choke, traffic, no traffic. The street product is designed, because it has more detergents, like I said, so that we can do this and last that long. If you want to do that type of extended drain intervals, then you have to stay with the street product. If you're going to be religious enough to say, I spent a lot of money, I'm going to change this in 5,000 miles, then 300V is perfect. But if like I said, if you want long drain intervals, then stop talking racing. And just so you know that the additive packages are designed, let's say we sponsor the 24-hour Le Mans. You can get 4,300 miles out of a 24-hour race if everything goes smoothly. Hell, that's from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean and probably hitting Puerto Rico. I mean, that's a long ways. But if you think about it, it's 24 hours on the oil at full throttle. It's sort of like you go to your copy machine and says, oh, I can do 50 copies a minute. And you put, I want 5,000 copies. The machine might break. But so the object is that if you're going to use it as a street application and long grain interval, you have to stay with a street line. If you're going to put on the street 3,000 to 5,000 miles, then 300V is the ultimate, especially for heat, etc.
And where does your 5100 come to play? It's a semi-synthetic.
Yes, yes. So, you know, I actually have a BMW R9T and it requires a semi-synthetic. And I'm like, well, I have all of this Wahoo stuff. And yeah, I got lots of friends and they're like, you want to stay in the warranty? You want to do this? You want to do that? Put the semi-synthetic. Okay, fine. So every manufacturer has its own idea, but it does get to technical stuff. If, for instance, the cylinder material and the ring material aren't so sophisticated, then maybe synthetics won't let the ring seat properly. But that's usually ancient technology. Anyways, I hope that answered that question.
It does, you know, which brings about another question, which I was thinking of, but it's great that you use the R9T as an example because I have a BMW R1200 GS, and the difference between mine and yours is mine is a liquid cooled bike and yours is oil cooled. What type of considerations do we need to have, whether we're doing a water cooled application, an oil or air cooled application, and maybe even variety of compression ratios, like the new Harley Adventure bike is 13:1, but you know, we've got some bikes that are much lower than that, or the operating RPM range, you know, how fast the engine is turning. What are some things we need to know?
That's it. You know, it's it plays a big role, but as time goes on, we really shoot. Well, we can go back to way in the day. I have a KZ Mark II 1000 and a Katana, the 82 Katana, and these are both air cooled. So you got a picture that we were specialists in motorcycles when there was no water cooled or oil cooled, and so all of the products are designed to handle a maximum temperature, hence why we went to an ester base, why we are specialists in synthetics, because everything we dealt with was freaking hot. So we had to make it work. And so now we design all the products for maximum temperature because, you know, especially automotive, you know, they went from big V8s or whatever, and in Europe, and the US, they started getting smaller and smaller, and then they put turbochargers and superchargers because they wanted more power out of smaller engines so that fuel economy, etc. But anyways, I think
no, you got it all. Yeah, and, you know, usually your bikes that operate engine speeds, you know, significantly are higher than automotive. You know, you got bikes at 10,000 RPMs, and some even push it to, you know, 20,000 RPMs, excuse me. So yeah, we know this stuff. And like Dave was mentioning, the past has actually come again, right? Because as the engines get smaller, and like you said, yeah, technology has gotten better. Our products have to meet those standards, that criteria to that performance level of what these bikes can put out now. And it's amazing what you can see what a bike can do.
So I guess what I should have said is that we shoot for the highest temperature, and if the bikes or what we're putting them in aren't as radical, then the oil, you know, we're not worried at all. But it's when we build it for here, for the what if. I mean, racing is an invitation for catastrophe, right? I mean, you're pushing it on the line, right? And if the rider isn't bumping once in a while, crashing once in a while, you know, they ain't playing. So, you know, we definitely look to shoot for the top, and whatever's on the, you know, not as needing. Okay, it's an overkill. but I'd rather be I'd rather be an overkill.
Yeah, Dave, but could you say that a lot of that technology still comes to the research and development we do, like MotoGP bikes? I've taken the oil to the teams, and I look at the weight. I don't talk about it because I can't, but very low viscosities, and people scratch the, like, man, that's a low viscosity for that bike. Well, of course, that R1 that you buy at your local motorcycle has a wet clutch. The R1 that looks like an R1 that Valentino Rossi races as a dry clutch product. Wait, that R1, I have a wet clutch. Why does it have a dry clutch? So you go from one type of performance level to one hardcore performance level. So our products get all that research and development from things like that. It comes from there. That's where it starts. That's where the foundation starts. And that's why we're very specific on what we do and know how to do it.
So let's toss that into, since you related, different type of engines, different type of RPM. Our motorcycle technology and crossover to automotive technology. When you go and you look at very unique cars, they have gear-driven cams. They got 12 cylinders. Ferrari is buzzing along at pretty high RPM on a Sunday afternoon somewhere in the canyon somewhere. So technology now is getting closer and closer because automotive is becoming harder and harder and demanding more and more. But they never, so far they haven't mixed all three compartments in one application. But it's just to say that as technology is growing in both automotive and power sports, shall we say, we start to fit much better than our competitors that have low quality stuff, because now the engines are demanding outrageous performance. So the market's kind of coming towards us instead of us coming towards them.
All right, we have some questions from the chat that I definitely want to get to. This first one that came in early, you might also have to explain the question a little bit before getting to the answer for those who might not know, but it says, if the oil had better air release properties, wouldn't that lead to less oil aeration and less oil cavitation, better lubrication and protection?
Yes, very good. Somebody asked a very good question.
Michael Colburn.
Okay, Michael. So it's fantastic actually, because we use a very strong, it's kind of a silicon type of additive, which we consider anti-foam. So in the past, one of the things that got me so excited about working with Motul is in 1985. They sent us some samples and we put it on the dyno, and as the question was mentioning, we had this nice head of foam in the sight window and we shut down, and it was like, oh, this oil isn't really designed for this application. And it was immediate, like, okay, this is good, this is good, this is good, but we must increase the anti-foam characteristics right away. Why? Because as the question states, first, let's just say, if you can see that, how do you drive your car? Well, you do one of these, maybe some Baja, if you get to Daytona, you're doing one of these things. But if you look at your motorcycle, it's like, how do you ride the motorcycle? Well, you lean it into corners, that big round thing that's on the side of the right side, left side, wherever it is. When you do, like, say, a nice sweeper, the oil just doesn't fly up. It's going to level out. We have a clutch basket. We have gears. We have shift forks, shift drums. We have all sorts of nasty stuff trying to aerate the oil. So we must get rid of the bubble. And so it kind of like this. Here's the bubble. The additive kind of splits it a little bit so it lets the air out. Why is it so important? It's absolutely, this question is absolutely correct, is that if you have air in the oil, it really aerates. Oil pumps pump oil. Mm-hmm. If you have too much aeration, you lose oil pressure. And the next thing is that air is a great insulator. It's not a great transfer of heat. And so what happens is that you increase your temperature because the air is now being an insulator, and you lose oil pressure if you have too much foam. So on a motorcycle, especially very high RPMs, you're doing all this stuff to it while you're riding. We really have to be quite efficient on anti-foam because of the characteristics. But automotive now, I'm sure everybody understands windage trays, and then they put a deeper sump, and all that stuff is to keep the oil away from spinning parts and being sloshed around, and in effort to cut down on the foam. In motorcycles, we just don't have that much space underneath the engine to put some kind of a windage tray and bigger, sump capacities. So that's kind of the guy's question was excellent. Hopefully I explained it.
I think so. Another question from the chat. And if you do have a question, please feel free to type it in, and we will get to all of them in our allotted time. For the 300V Motorsport oils, are there components that might interact with the emission systems? What would be a good solution for users doing competitions?
Oh, well,
We were just talking about that.
Just talking that.
Break it down.
We sponsor many teams. So I'm going to just use some of our, like one of our teams that very, very sophisticated is a team called Yoshimura R&D. They were Suzuki factory racing for 40 years. If you go into and look at their bike, they're actually using 5 oxygen sensors, not 1 or not 2, but 5. They're individually tuning each cylinder, and then they tune a collective. So if we were to not take care, like in other words, if we have too much phosphorus in the formulation, phosphorus is sort of like if you're allergic to shrimp and you decide you're going to have a whole plate full of shrimp and you're going to die from poison. The catalytic converter and its exotic metals, they don't like, for instance, phosphorus. They suck it up and it screws the whole thing up and it destroys it. So we have to be very careful for what chemistry we're going to use, even in our racing oil, for today's fuel injection systems that need oxygen sensors, et cetera. So the question would have been, maybe some years ago, we would have been too rich on some additives that would affect it. But now, knowing that that's the technology of today, we purposely make sure that the additive package, if it gets by the rings or whatever, but we know we're going to get by the rings wherever during racing. So we obviously must make sure that the additive package doesn't make the fuel system not function. So the answer is yes. We pay very close attention to that, and not a problem, by the way. All of our products, we check for that, except the new classic line and vintage lines, of which we have oils that are made for pre-70s, and we have oils that are pre-80s, because they have a high level of ZDDP, and the P on the end is phosphorus. So anything over 1,200 parts per million on a motorcycle application, racing or not, is not advised on the phosphorus. Phosphorus is excellent extreme pressure additive. It won't let the cam wear, but a lot of good the cam will be if the fuel system stops working. So it's a balance. Everything we do is a balance, and we bring it to the very edge.
And while we're talking about additives too, and I'll use a street application for this, but really more specifically, we're talking here today about making sure that you're using the right product for your racing application. But for example, the BMW people, they might look at the back of a label and see, okay, my owner's manual says I need to have the JASO, MA2, and this and that. Well, I can buy the BMW oil and it's going to cost me $16, $18 a quart. Or for $20, I can go to Walmart and get this T6 oil, and great, it's got the same, things on the back. But then people say, well, it's got way too much zinc for this, and it's going to ruin your catalytic converter and all that. So explain again for people who don't understand why we need to talk about the right additive package and what we need to know about the label, what we need to know about what we're putting into our motorcycle or UTV or quad.
Yes. So you're talking about a truck oil that people start to put into the motorcycle application. So, it's interesting is that with our automotive line, for instance, we have products that work well with gasoline, and it works well with diesel. But we're talking about a street application, limited performance, et cetera, et cetera. When you want to be more specific, motorcycles are running on gasoline. Gasoline is quite volatile. Gasoline is, you put a match to it, it blows up. Diesel, on the other hand, is fuel oil. I mean, those motion pictures that you see, and there's a big gunfight and they shoot the tank and the tank explodes. It doesn't happen. Diesel needs very high heat compression to actually ignite. So the additive package to work with gasoline and the additive package to work with a diesel truck, man, these are completely different. The detergent levels are outrageous for a true diesel oil. Which would be way too much for a performance oil for a gasoline engine. So yeah, it works. It's sort of like, we say, okay, you use this is the best, and then ultimately you'll get Goldwing guys or whatever. I've been using this product for 10 years. I have 100,000 miles. I said, nowhere did we say that if you don't use a good oil, you blow up, right? What we're saying is that when you go to take this engine apart, right, with the characteristics of our ester bases, for instance, the idea that when you take it apart, you re-ring, you do this, you reuse parts, clean them, maybe put some new bearings or bushings or something, but you don't have to change everything. And really inexpensive oils that have not enough of whatever additive package, it's not like it's going to blow up, but when you take it apart, you're going to find all sorts of wear, blah, blah, blah. To use a truck oil, it has a different TBN, it's usually way high, TBN, total base number, Rolaids, calcium. 300V is packed. It has something like 2,400 parts per million of calcium, which is an acid type of application. But when you use these, like, okay, this diesel oil, we tested out, it came out to 1.9 something of sulfated ash, right? The result of combustion and burning, you get ash. The maximum you can have in JSO in the rules is 1.2. So you have the oil that we tested, this diesel truck oil, was just like this far from absolutely not being good, or shall we say it's dirty from the start. I mean, from the start. So of course, we don't recommend it because we sell it. We have a heavy duty line, and we have a street car line that's gas and diesel. We have a motorcycle line, completely different additive package because it's a different app. When's the last time you saw a 18-wheeler and you can hear it going 10,000 RPM? If it goes 10,000 RPM, you're going to see pistons flying out of the side. So how do the people, how do they relate a 5,000 maximum RPM big truck to a 12,000 RPM spinning motorcycle, and think that the oil or the additive package or the chemistry or things spinning or anti-foam can be the same? It's just not possible.
Yeah, and taking into consideration too that a motorcycle has a wet clutch. That's very important. I'm going to bring a piece over so we could break it down quickly. And it's this product here. This component here is very important. What you spoke about, Jason.
So I don't know if you can see it. I guess we can zoom in, but this is a clutch pack. Well, this is actually the whole clutch basket.
Yes.
And these are multiple clutch plates. This is a pressure plate. So what he's talking about is that JSO MA2 or the JSO rating that this truck oil now might start to print on the back. When you pull the clutch lever in, this is what that pack represents. And this pressure plate and these springs it kind of looks like this. You pull the plate, this pressure plate goes up, these things rattle around. Then you let the clutch out, it squeezes the pack, it locks it up, and this is how it transfers the power from engine to gearbox out. This is what we designed the product for from the start. And when you're talking about this big, well-selling diesel truck oil, this is not what they look for in the beginning of the design of the product. They're looking for making this truck last between oil changes and last 1 million miles. You're not going to have that motorcycle last 1 million miles because it's completely different setup. If that answers the question, in other words, yeah, it works, but it is completely designed incorrectly.
Yeah, no, that absolutely does. Let's talk about UTV and side-by-sides.
Yeah.
Automotive or power sports products, what do they need to use?
Powersports, for sure, for sure.
You know, we make a line of side-by-side ATV product. And all of those that are specially labeled, we take into consideration of something we said a little while ago, is that we have a 300V off-road to handle jumps and to handle friction, etc. If you picture a side-by-side or a quad, the side-by-sides are much bigger, etc., different applications. You look at the back, right? It's the same sticky dirt, but they now have 2 big tires. And so you must work on temperature, because you've got all the stuff blocking the engine. You must work on friction modification, because we want that 18% better friction. Could you imagine you have the best engine in the world and you're running in the lead, and 2 laps before the end, your clutch fries? You lose. So, you know, the object is to design something that makes it, shoot for that application. So I hope that works.
Yeah, here's a great example. You know, we a few years ago, we won the Dakar with the side-by-side for one of the teams. They used the Off-Road 1560, because there you go to rigorous types of racing, hardcore racing. I'm talking, you got dirt, you've got heat, you've got water, you've got mud, you got so many things going on that you got to be sure that that engine is going to be well protected for many, many hours and many, many days of using that engine in competition. So yeah, it's very important to use the right product again for what the application is going to do.
Let's talk about 2-stroke as well. You know, yesterday we had a great conversation in pre-mix versus post-mix and everything else that folks that are running 2-strokes need to know.
Yes, Joey has some interesting products.
Got the 802T, and we got one for road. So we got an off-road product, 802T, and a road 802T.
Yeah, 710.
And no 710.
Okay, well, sorry guys, we were just looking for an injector premix, but for the 2-stroke market, you know, I don't know if you can see, but I guess I should have an automatic zoom, but one has a road bike. Ooh, okay, what did we drink last night? So you can see one has a road bike and one has a dirt bike. And the question is, well, what the heck? It's a 2-stroke oil. Well, why is there differences? Well, again, Motul, you know, we sit down and we go, what does this guy need? Okay, you can't compare a 40 horsepower or 20, whatever it is, 2-stroke on a dirt bike, single cylinder. Maybe you're going to see 10,000 RPM. Maybe you'll see 12,000 RPM. Okay, great. Then on a road bike, we're going to see something up to 18,000 RPM. So we're talking about completely different type of application. So the road has a bigger molecule. It's better for migration, going through jet, going through the carb, then, you know, getting into the engine and then separating so it can lubricate and then obviously get burned. So Off-road has a slightly smaller molecule, but it's made to go. It's made to race. Then we have the 802T road, bigger molecule. We run that down to like 24-1 on the road, and the off-road, you know, we might run it 100-1, because if you're running in a trail and you got a low, you know, you're in the forest. I mean, you just can't open it up in third gear wide open. You're going to end up hitting a tree or something. So we're talking about low RPM and more, you know, technical riding. We don't need such a rich mixture, right? So we can run the off-road close to 100-1 if it's really weak usage. On very, you know, we used to sponsor Suzuki factory, and Roger DeCoster. I mean, this guy is the hardest working guy in the paddock. My God, it's always in a dyno room. But I mean, you know, they were doing tests on motocross bikes down to 24-1, 32-1, although most of our, let's say, motocross teams will run anywhere from 40 to 60-1. So depending on application. Now, interesting is that we have 802T. And if I can go technical wise, 802T is oil and additives. Okay, this is a very concentrated premix only. Now we also have a 710, and these are it's an injector premix oil. It's made for oil tanks for, you know, two strokes that have injecting systems. So scooters and motorcycles and other bikes that you just fill up the oil tank and it delivers. Well, in a nutshell, if you can just picture a couple millimeter hole, these are the diameters of oil tank hoses. So the 710, or the injector premix oil, is oil. You see that oil, and then we use white spirits. White spirits is kind of a solvent. I mean, we would use gasoline, but gasoline explodes and not too safe, so can't ship it. So you got white spirits, and then we have a PIB. Okay, what's a PIB? Polyicyl butane. So if you take a Zippo lighter, you got yellow flame, blue smoke, put your hand over it, you get this black soot. It's a dirty fuel. If you take a big lighter and light it, you get blue flame, no smoke. And so this PIB additive doesn't do anything for performance. It makes it non-smoke. And if you're in, let's say Barcelona, 10 years back, we used to have 3 million scooters, two strokes. Could you imagine no anti-smoke in 3 million scooters in one city? You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. So all of them must run this injector premix oil that has PIBs in it. So big difference between an injector premix and a premix only. Now, for us guys who mix the oil, this can be used at 66-1 recreational use all day long. And everybody's like, well, no, I can't do that. And wait. The 802T, I said, is oil and a little bit of additives, right? The other one is full of white spirits, PIBs, and then additives. So you have this big chunk of stuff, but it means that this bottle, you know, it's limited in size. So you have to remove the oil to put this other stuff in it. So if you think about it, one shot glass, 1 ounce of this and 1 ounce of the 710, there's 20-30% more oil in it. So the 710 needs to be run at 50-1. This runs at 66-1, and you have the same amount of oil reaching the engine, if that makes sense, right? So that's the confusing part of it. Injector premix is actually less oil in the bottle, but gets rid of smoke, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And something new learned. Question from the chat. What is the maximum oil pressure and oil temperature the 300V blend will handle for motorsports, drag racing, rallycross, and drifting applications?
Yeah, this guy, he just took a shotgun.
And I know we're stepping out of motorcycles and power sports, but
No, it's cool.
No.
Yeah.
Question again?
range that it can take from all the things mentioned,
Just
rallies,
kidding, just kidding, just kidding.
just
So
in case.
I haven't found, well, okay, as I mentioned before, that we tested some oils at 350 degrees before we panicked. So a lot of times on race bikes, you're gonna take some duct tape, some electrical tape, whatever. You just block that red line spot where temperature is concerned, because mineral based, you get to 250, you're panicking. Well, we get 300 V to 250, we're kind of like, yeah, it's hot. So we had some flat track guys that we were experimenting with, and the dude got to 320 degrees Fahrenheit. I was like, things are rattling in your engine, like the sleeves got to be moving unless that green Loctite's holding it still. So the app, if you can overheat, well, let me show you something. This is a little demo I made up. Can you show them that? I don't know if they can see it. So this is, we were talking about the advantages of synthetic versus mineral. The very first thing that the advantage, or second advantage and third advantage, let me quickly run through it. The first advantage is that it can handle very, very high temperature. So what you're looking at was done in my oven, is a mineral oil compared to a synthetic. And this, if you want to deep fry a turkey, you fill the deep fryer with peanut oil, because if you filled it with butter, for instance, well, it exploded with carbon on, it can't handle the temperature. So you fill it with a peanut oil because it can handle it. So if you look at that example, the mineral oil at 400 degrees, 1 hour, it just carbonized, all of the crud that was in it, all the paraffins just burned and they stuck. The other side would be the synthetic or peanut oil, right? So cooked at the same time, cooked at the same temperature, you see the two end results. This is the difference between a synthetic and a mineral-based product, is that when the poop hits the fan, one is going to stay there and work. The other one is going to burn up, carbonize, and everybody's seen sludge and ugly mess. So the answer to the question is, it's somewhere near 330 before I start to go like, what the hell's going on? And as far as pressure, I haven't, no one's ever called to say that it can't handle the pressure. The object is that the oil pressure should remain much more stable with our formula, because it has a very high viscosity index. It's something like 180, 186.
Very strong shear stability.
Yes. So let me show something else. One of the key things, I don't know if I mentioned when we were talking about the advantages of an ester versus the group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. Remember, we were talking about these different groups. Really quickly, this is a piston. It's a piston right out of Yoshimura Superbike. And this went through 1,600 miles of, shall we say, disaster. And you can see it looks brand new. Anyways, while the engine's running, good question by the guy. The mineral oil is doing its job. It's working just fine. It's lubricating, it's doing its job. Well, motorcycles and some exotic cars, you stop the motor and you let it sit. Well, mineral oils, actually group 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4 are neutral in their makeup. And so they don't adhere to ferrous metals, right? So after a certain amount of time in the garage, this is why they say the most wear is done during startup. Well, because the oil's gone, right? It fell off of from gravity. This is an example, another Yoshimura piston, that it does the same. It runs, it's oiling, it's doing its job. You see that the molecules are much more stable. They're all about the same size. This is a big difference between a true synthetic and mineral-based. Mineral-based looks much more out of whack at different sizes, et cetera, as you can see. But look at the advantage. The ester has a positive end chain and ferrous metals have a negative end chain. So what happens is that when you shut it down, the ester is attracted to the rings, the rod, the pin, the bearing, the babbitt material underneath is iron, so it's attracted. So what happens is that even if you sit in the garage for 1 year, you might have as little as 1/1000th or as even smaller as 1/1,000,000th of an inch. And everybody's, well, that's not very much. I said, well, 1/1,000,000th of an inch is a whole lot more than zero. Okay, so with an ester base sitting in, wherever, engine sitting in there, getting ready to put in, your, classic bike is in the garage for a year, blah, blah, blah. You want this ester to leave a film. So when 1, doesn't corrode, 2, doesn't rust, 3, when you start it and you don't have any oil pressure, you still have a film preventing wear. And this is the advantage of the ester over group 1, group 2, group 3, and even group 4. So
Which are 5100, 7100, 300V. Yeah,
we all have ester.
absolutely.
All Powersports that are very high performance at the Motul range has a form of esters. Maybe not 4 like the 300V if we're talking about 7100, but designed for the application.
Okay. Well, I hate that actually the clock is running us out of time right now, because I know we can continue talking. I know there are a couple of questions that we didn't get to. One about best for a Chevy engine or for drag racing, and some other applications mixing with methanol. I will say at the Motul website, it's pretty incredible just how comprehensive the information is, number one, but number two, how you can put in your application and what you're doing, and also get directed to what you need. But gentlemen, this has just been incredible. And like I said, I know I could probably talk to y'all for a couple of days and still have questions after we're all said and done. But this was wonderfully informative, and we appreciate it.
No, wait till we get to some brake fluids and the different temperatures and hygroscopic and gear oils. I guess we can come back a few times if you want.
Yes,
I would love it.
Absolutely, and we'll work
a lot of stuff.
we'll work with you on that. And you have a great team to work with, and we put this together. Thank you, Nolan, for organizing it. And yes, we'll invite you back. And you're right, Brad, we could have listened for hours and hours, but we keep webinars to 1 hour. This specific webinar has been recorded. It will be posted later today on the EPARTRADE platform, as well as on our YouTube channel.
Excellent.
Also have pushed back on the homepage of EPARTRADE Motul's product. So go on there, click, and connect with them directly. We will be back next week, and we're going to be talking oil pumps this time with a Peterson fluid system.
So, good.
Go on EPARTRADE.com, register for next week. And thank you very much for watching. So we'll see you guys in about a week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Registering on EPARTRADE is easy. Fill out your name, email, phone number, and create a secure password. Next, select your business type. Choose supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose racing business if you're looking to find new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose race team if you own or are a member of a professional racing team. Begin typing your company name. We most likely already have your company in our database, which you can select from the drop-down. Then, enter your job title. Choose Claim Company if you'll be editing your company profile. Other members of your company can choose Join Company if they'd like to use EPARTRADE as well. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Click Register Now, and your registration will be submitted for approval. You'll need to confirm your email once it goes through. To keep our platform industry only, you'll be approved shortly after. If we require additional proof of business, we'll reach out. Welcome to EPARTRADE.